Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. I hope you had a great week. I came across 3 very interesting headlines this week, so I thought, why not talk about them? This is the first one. China's birth rate plunges to its lowest in 4 decades. The second one reads, more Americans say they're not planning to have a child. The third and the last headline is from India. For the first time ever, India's fertility rate is below replacement level. What's replacement level? 2.1. It basically means every woman should have 2.1 children if a country is to replace its dying population. But for the first time ever, an average Indian woman is not having more than 2 children. And neither are women in most of the world's leading countries. South Korea is one of the world's most advanced economies. The country's fertility rate is 1. 1. Meaning an average South Korean woman has 1 child. Many don't have children at all. In Singapore, the fertility rate is 1.1. In Hong Kong, too, it is 1.1. 1.3 in Spain, 1.3 in Italy, 1.5 in Canada. In America, there are just 1.7 births per woman. And so is the case in China. So here's a question. Why aren't women having more babies? Isn't that what women did for the longest time? Marry, have babies, continue the bloodline. A childless woman was branded as barren. She was frowned upon. In ancient Rome, a woman could be divorced for not giving birth to a child. Infertile women were flogged with goat skin. In Tang Dynasty in China too, not having a child was ground for divorce. In the Middle Ages, infertile women were called witches, compared to Satan. The only time history spared a woman without a child was when she had taken the vow of celibacy, when she was a nun. Motherhood was a moral obligation for all the other women. It's not anymore. This is the era of opting out. Welcome to 2021. Women today are choosing to be child-free. They're chalking out a different path for themselves, becoming more than just a reproductive machine. Let's come back to the example of South Korea. Something very unique is happening in that country. There is a no marriage movement. You see, South Korea has always been a very conservative society. Women have been the primary housekeepers, caregivers, and nurturers. When women entered the workforce, the gender revolution was left incomplete. And by that I mean that while women entered offices, South Korea did little or nothing to reduce their responsibilities at home. So women were expected to do both. Work at offices and also adhere to gender norms at home. So many decided to pick. They chose career over children, career over marriage. Let me show you some numbers. In 2014, South Korea registered over 300,000 marriages. 4 years later, the numbers dropped to around 250,000. Some women who had already married chose not to have babies. Earlier, South Korea would call such women bihon. Today, South Korea is normalizing remaining a bihon. Not too far away from South Korea, Hong Kong's fertility rate has also dropped. Women in the city are retreating from marriage and motherhood. Estimates say that by 2041, 1/3 of Hong Kong's women would not have married by the end of their childbearing age. Women are citing a plethora of reasons. Some say they're overworked and they have no time for a baby. Many say starting a family in Hong Kong is way too expensive. First of all, you need to have enough room for the baby, but houses in Hong Kong are amongst the world's most expensive. You also need to provide for a child's education, but education again is very expensive in Hong Kong. Many can't afford to bring up a baby. Many simply do not want to. Then there is India, the world's second most populated country. It is also home to the world's largest millennial population. If India is to replace its population, millennial women need to have more than 2 babies. But many would study instead, marry late, and chase their career goals. The 2011 census found that the number of single women had grown 39%. A Pew Research found that as of 2019, just 44% of the millennials were married, 61% of boomers, and 81% of silents were married by the time they'd reached that age. This is the trend of opting out, breaking free of the age-old gender norms. The movement in America is very different. Women are not revolting against marriage as such. It's just that couples are choosing to stay child-free. It may be because of financial burdens or wanting to live their own lives or simply being okay with not having a child. The pandemic has exacerbated the feeling of wanting to be child-free. America's birth rate has fallen to its lowest in a decade. The country also recorded its second slowest population growth ever. Earlier this year, Pew surveyors asked childless Americans aged 18 to 49 how likely are they to have a child someday. 21% replied, not likely. Just 3 years ago, that number was 16%. Today, couples around the world also feel a sense of uncertainty about the future. It may be because of climate change, the current health crisis. What the pandemic has also done is made a lot of couples realize how difficult it is to bring up a child when locked up at home without caregivers and other services. In the middle of the pandemic, a mother took to Twitter to vent. She wrote, "Non-parents have no idea how hard it's been." Many replied, "Yes, we do," and that's exactly why they've chosen not to become parents. The debate became so ugly, by the way, that the mother had to take down the tweet. Truth be told, the world is still very much uncomfortable with the idea of women not marrying or couples not becoming parents. A child-free couple is often chastised for being selfish. Pope Francis, the supposedly progressive Pope, recently had a word of advice for non-parents. He said, "The choice not to have children is selfish. Life rejuvenates and acquires energy when it multiplies. It is enriched, not impoverished." Rich words from a non-parent. Now, everything said and done, the trend of opting out does have its scary consequences. The lesser the number of babies, the lesser the number of people joining the workforce, the lesser the output, the GDP and economic growth. Japan is already staring at such a problem. Estimates say that by 2060, 4 out of 10 people in Japan will be aged 65 or above. But can the onus of replacing a country's population be on its women or couples? Wouldn't we then just be going back to medieval ages and once again making motherhood a moral imperative? The South Korean government is testing the waters. Not too long ago, it put out a map showing women of childbearing age by cities. Today, the government is also pushing women to date and marry. It is encouraging dating events, encouraging dating at workplaces. Is that how we plan to get youngsters to have a family? Let's ask China. The country is doing all it can to fight the disastrous consequences of its one-child policy. In the late 1970s, China limited the number of babies per couple to 1. That was to limit their population growth. Patriarchal China then selectively aborted baby girls. In 2016, China came up with a 2-child policy. In 2021, it became a 3-child policy. But is this number game making any real difference? Is it really encouraging couples to have more babies? Here's what countries can do instead. Have more family-friendly policies, have better state-run schools, make workplaces more flexible for mothers, make childcare affordable, enhance maternity and paternity leaves, and finally, acknowledge that having a child or not having a child is a matter of choice. In 1950, an average woman was having 4.7 children in her lifetime, more than 4 children basically. Today, that number has dropped to 2.67. By 2100, the number is projected to drop below 1.7. Japan's population will become less than 53 million by the end of the century. Italy will be at 28 million. The population of South Korea, Spain, Portugal and Thailand will halve. As for China, its population will drop to 732 million. That's the projection. As we come out of the pandemic, not having a baby may become the new normal.